Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the cold metal of the observation deck window, watching the massive alien ship drift closer to Earth's defensive stations. The Korthik vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Behind it, dozens more ships emerged from the swirling portal they had torn in space itself. "How many?" she asked without turning from the window. Lieutenant Commander James Park consulted his tablet, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Sensors count 47 capital ships, Elena, each one 3 times the size of our largest dreadnought. We're looking at a fleet that could glass the entire solar system." Elena finally turned away from the window, her jaw set in the stubborn line that her crew had learned to both fear and respect. At 38, she was the youngest captain ever to command Earth's primary defense station, and she had earned that position through a combination of tactical brilliance and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. "What about our allies?" she asked, moving toward the central command platform where holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the system. "The Altarians have moved their fleet to defensive positions around their colonies," Park replied, his tone making it clear what he thought of their alien allies' decision. The Xanthari sent a message expressing their regret but stating that discretion was the better part of valor. "The Helios Confederation is maintaining strict neutrality." Elena nodded grimly. She had expected as much. Humanity's allies were fair-weather friends at best, quick to benefit from human innovation and determination, but equally quick to abandon them when real danger appeared. The communication array crackled to life, and Admiral Chen's weathered face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Vasquez, I'm transmitting the latest intelligence on the Korthik Empire. What we're seeing isn't just an invasion force." "Sir?" Elena stepped closer to the screen, noting the unusual tension in the Admiral's expression. "They're calling it a culling fleet, according to our xenological experts. The Korthik only deploy these when they encounter a species they consider potentially dangerous to galactic stability. They're not here to conquer us, Elena. They're here to exterminate us." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the station's life support systems. Elena felt the weight of that revelation settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket, but her expression remained steady. Around her, she could see her crew struggling to process what they had just learned. "What's our tactical assessment?" Elena asked, her voice calm despite the circumstances. Admiral Chun's image flickered as he consulted something off-screen. "Every military strategist we've consulted gives us the same answer. With the forces they've brought, complete human extinction is not just likely, it's inevitable. Our best estimates give us maybe 6 hours once they begin their attack." Elena turned to study the tactical display, where red icons representing the Korthik fleet hung like a cluster of malevolent stars. Each ship was a technological marvel that outclassed anything humanity had ever built. Their shields could withstand direct hits from fusion warheads. Their weapons could punch through the heaviest armor like tissue paper, and their faster-than-light technology was centuries ahead of anything human scientists had achieved. "There's one thing, though," Admiral Chun continued, and Elena detected a note of something that might have been hope in his voice. "Intelligence suggests that the Korthik commander, Admiral Threnax, is known for offering single combat to species he considers worthy. If a species can produce a champion who can defeat him in personal combat, he honors what he calls the ancient ways and withdraws his forces." Lieutenant Commander Park scoffed. "With respect, sir, that's hardly helpful. The Korthik are 8 feet tall and have the strength of 3 humans. Their bones are like steel cables, and their reaction time is twice as fast as ours." "I know," Admiral Chun replied quietly, "but it's the only chance we have. I'm sending you everything we know about their combat traditions. Study it, Elena. Find something we can use." The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at the tactical display. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the desperate efficiency of people who knew they were likely living through their final hours. She could hear whispered conversations about families, about regrets, about the unfairness of humanity's situation. Elena had always known this day might come. Ever since first contact with the galactic community 20 years ago, humanity had struggled to find its place among species that had centuries or millennia of technological advancement. Humans were newcomers, primitives who had barely learned to travel between stars when they stumbled into a galaxy full of ancient civilizations, what they lacked in technology. However, humans made up for in other ways. They were adaptable, creative, and possessed a stubborn refusal to give up that had impressed even their most condescending alien contacts. Human traders had revolutionized interstellar commerce with their willingness to take risks others considered insane. Human engineers had solved problems that had stumped alien scientists for generations. Human soldiers had proven themselves in a dozen minor conflicts, earning grudging respect for their tactical innovation and absolute loyalty to their comrades, but none of that would matter against a Kortha culling fleet. Elena walked to her personal workstation and began reviewing the files Admiral Chun had transmitted. The Korthik were an ancient warrior species, older than human civilization and proud of their military traditions. They saw themselves as the guardians of galactic order, stepping in to eliminate species they deemed too dangerous or chaotic to be allowed to develop. According to the intelligence files, Admiral Threnax himself was a legend among his people. He had commanded culling fleets against 17 different species over the past 3 centuries, and not once had any of them been able to produce a champion capable of matching him in combat. He was described as the finest warrior the Korthek Empire had produced in 1,000 years, a master of every form of combat known to their species. "Captain," Park called softly from his station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Korthek flagship." Elena straightened her uniform and nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The tactical display disappeared, replaced by the imposing figure of Admiral Threnax. The Korthik commander was every bit as intimidating as the intelligence files had suggested. His species resembled humans in basic body structure, but everything about him was larger, more imposing. His skin had a metallic gray tone, and his eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of absolute confidence. Ornate armor covered his massive frame, and Elena could see scars across his neck and arms that told of countless battles. "Humans," Threnax said, his voice carrying easily across the communication link despite the mechanical translation software. "I am Admiral Threnax of the Korthik Empire. I bring greetings and the opportunity for an honorable death." Elena stepped forward, meeting the alien commander's gaze steadily. "Admiral Threnax, I am Captain Elena Vasquez of Earth Defense Command. On behalf of humanity, I acknowledge your greeting." Something that might have been approval flickered in Threnax's glowing eyes. "You do not beg or offer surrender. This is good. Too many species waste time with pleading when death comes for them." "We're not dead yet," Elena replied calmly. Threnax's mouth opened in what Elena realized was probably laughter, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "No, you are not. And because your species has shown courage in the brief time we have observed you, I will honor the ancient ways. Choose your champion, human. If they can defeat me in single combat, my fleet will withdraw and humanity will be spared. If not, the culling will proceed as planned." Elena felt her heart hammering in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "What are the terms of this combat?" "Traditional rules," Threnax replied. "No ranged weapons, no advanced technology. Blade, claw, and strength. The combat continues until death or surrender. Will you accept these terms?" Elena looked around at her bridge crew, seeing her own desperate hope reflected in their faces. It was an impossible situation, but it was also their only chance. "I accept the terms on behalf of humanity." "Where will this combat take place?" "I will board your station in 1 hour," Threnax said. "Prepare your champion. I look forward to a worthy fight." The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen. 1 hour to find a human who could defeat a warrior who had never lost a fight in 3 centuries. 1 hour to save their entire species. "Captain," Park said quietly, "who are we going to choose?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, running through every human combat specialist she knew of. Marines, special forces operators, martial artists, even gladiators from the underground fighting circuits. None of them would stand a chance against Threnax in a fair fight, but Elena had not survived this long by fighting fair. "Send a message to Admiral Chun," she said finally. "Tell him I need the personnel files for every human who's had contact with non-human species in the past 5 years. Combat experience preferred, but not required." "Captain, surely you're not considering—" "I'm not looking for the strongest human," Elena interrupted. "I'm looking for the smartest one. The Korthik think they know what kind of weapon humanity will deploy against them. Let's prove them wrong." As her crew rushed to carry out her orders, Elena read, Dr. Sarah Chun had been in the middle of treating a Xanthari refugee's plasma burns when the emergency communication came through. The message was brief and urgent. "Report to Earth Defense Station Alpha immediately, highest priority. Bring nothing but the clothes on your back." Sarah finished bandaging her patient's third arm before responding to the summons. As the chief xenobiologist and trauma surgeon at the largest civilian hospital in the Sol system, she was used to emergency calls, but this felt different. The transportation shuttle that picked her up was military, and the pilot's face was grim in a way that suggested Earth itself was in danger. Now she stood in Captain Vasquez's ready room, studying the service record the captain had just handed her. It was her own file, but seeing it laid out like this made her realize how unusual her career had been. "You've treated wounded soldiers from 17 different species," Captain Vasquez said, pacing behind her desk. "You've performed surgery on Altarian physiology, Centauri biochemistry, even managed to save a Helios Confederation officer despite having never seen their species before." Sarah nodded slowly. "I volunteered for xenological medical training because I wanted to help whoever needed it, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from." "That's exactly why you're here," the captain said, stopping her pacing to look directly at Sarah. "Dr. Chun, I'm going to ask something of you that seems impossible, and I need you to understand that I wouldn't ask if there was any other option." Captain Vasquez activated the wall display, showing the massive Korthik fleet hanging in space like a collection of metallic predators. "In 43 minutes, Admiral Threnax of the Korthik Empire is going to board this station to engage in single combat with a human champion. If we win, humanity survives. If we lose, every human being in the galaxy dies." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Captain, I'm a doctor, not a soldier. I've never been in combat in my life." "I know," the captain replied. "But you have something that every other human I considered lacks. You have friends." Before Sarah could ask what that meant, the ready room door opened and 3 figures entered. Sarah gasped in recognition. The first was Corvin, a Xanthari engineer she had saved after a reactor accident had flooded his workspace with deadly radiation. His insectoid features were hard for humans to read, but Sarah could see the concern in the angle of his compound eyes. The second was Thylus, an Altarian security officer whose life Sarah had saved when a terrorist attack had left him with severe internal injuries. His crystalline body reflected the room's light in patterns that Sarah had learned to interpret as emotional states. The third was Nyx, a member of the Helios Confederation whose gender was fluid and whose species resembled aquatic mammals more than any Earth creature. Sarah had performed experimental surgery to save Nyx's life when a shipping accident had left them critically injured with wounds no one understood. "Dr. Chun," Corvin said in his clicking, translated voice, "we came as soon as we heard what was happening." "We couldn't stand by while humanity faced extinction," Thylus added. His crystalline body pulsing with determined orange light, Nyx flowed forward on their flexible limbs. "Especially not when we owe our lives to human compassion." Sarah looked between her alien friends and Captain Vasquez, understanding beginning to dawn. "You want me to fight Admiral Threnax?" "I want you to be yourself," the captain replied. "The Korthik expect us to send our finest warrior to die gloriously in hopeless combat. They faced 17 species, and every one of them sent their strongest fighter to face Threnax. Every one of them failed." Sarah shook her head. "Captain, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't fight a Korthik warrior. I'd be dead in seconds." Not if you're not fighting alone, Captain Vasquez said quietly. The pieces clicked together in Sarah's mind. The ancient ways, she said slowly. I need to research exactly what those traditions allow. 20 minutes later, Sarah sat in the station's library, surrounded by holographic displays showing Korthak history and combat traditions. Her alien friends had gathered around her, offering their own knowledge of the warrior culture that was about to determine humanity's fate. The ancient ways are older than the Korthak Empire, Thylas explained, his crystalline body cycling through thoughtful blue patterns. They date back to when the Korthak were tribal warriors on their homeworld. The traditions have been maintained for religious reasons even as their technology advanced. Corvin's mandibles clicked as he accessed his own cultural databases. According to Zenthari historical records, the ancient ways originally governed combat between tribal champions. Each champion could bring their clan's wisdom and support, but the actual fighting had to be done by the champion themselves. Define support, Sarah said, leaning forward with the intensity she usually reserved for complicated medical procedures. Nyx's aquatic features rippled with excitement. In the original traditions, a champion could receive advice, encouragement, and tactical guidance from their clan during combat. Some accounts even mention champions fighting alongside trained animals or bound spirits. Sarah felt her heart beginning to race with something that might have been hope. Could the Korthak refuse to honor their own ancient traditions? Impossible, Thylas replied, his crystalline structure flashing bright orange with certainty. Admiral Threnax has built his entire reputation on being the perfect embodiment of Korthak honor. If he refused to follow the ancient ways after invoking them, his own people would consider him dishonored. Then we have a chance, Sarah said, standing up with new determination. But I need to understand exactly what I'm facing. The next 20 minutes were spent studying everything known about Admiral Threnax. The Korthak commander stood 8.5 feet tall and weighed nearly 400 pounds of pure muscle and bone density that approached metallic hardness. His reflexes were twice as fast as a human's. His strength was legendary even among his own people, and he had mastered every form of combat known to Korthak culture. He's never been wounded in single combat, Corvin reported, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and concern. Not once in 3 centuries of fighting. Because every species has sent their champions to fight his kind of fight, Sarah replied, her medical mind already working through the problem like a particularly complex surgery. They've tried to match strength with strength, speed with speed. That's not how you treat a superior opponent. What do you mean? Captain Vasquez asked from where she had been quietly observing. Sarah turned to face her. In surgery, when you're faced with a condition that's more powerful than anything in your arsenal, you don't try to overpower it. You find its weakness and exploit it with precision. The Korthak are warrior philosophers. They respect strength, but they also respect wisdom and honor. You think you can convince him to surrender? The captain asked. No, Sarah replied, moving toward the door. I think I can convince him that he's not fighting just one human. Admiral Threnax materialized on the station's combat deck precisely on schedule. The Korthak commander appeared in a column of golden light, his massive form becoming solid as his ship's transporter released him. He wore traditional combat armor that gleamed like black metal, and carried a weapon that resembled a cross. Between a sword and a warhammer. Sarah stood at the opposite end of the combat deck, wearing simple medical scrubs and carrying no weapons at all. Behind her, arranged in a semicircle according to the positioning she had researched from ancient Korthak clan gatherings, stood Corvin, Thylas, and Nyx, Threnax's glowing eyes fixed on the group with obvious confusion. Human, you bring witnesses to your death? I bring my clan, Sarah replied, her voice carrying across the deck with more confidence than she felt. As is allowed under the ancient ways. The Korthak commander's confusion deepened. Your clan? These are not humans. No, Sarah said, stepping forward. They're something better. They're my friends. Threnax's massive head tilted to one side as he studied the arrangement. Sarah could see him processing what he was seeing, trying to fit it into his understanding of how challenges worked. You are a healer, he said finally, his translator making his voice sound like distant thunder. I can smell the medicine on your hands, see the way you move like one who preserves life rather than takes it. I am, Sarah confirmed. Dr. Sarah Chun, trauma surgeon and xenobiologist. And they stand with you by choice? They stand with me because I once stood with them, Sarah replied. When they were dying, when no one else would help them, when saving their lives meant risking my own. Threnax was quiet for a long moment, his glowing eyes moving from Sarah to each of her alien friends. This is unprecedented in 300 years of challenges. No species has ever sent a healer as their champion. Maybe that's why they all lost, Sarah said quietly. The combat deck fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Sarah could feel the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. But she also felt the presence of her friends behind her, their different forms of support giving her strength she had never imagined possible. Admiral Threnax raised his weapon, its crystalline edge catching the deck's harsh lighting. The ancient ways must be honored. Prepare yourself, Dr. Sarah Chun. Show me what weapon humanity deploys against the night. Sarah took a deep. Admiral Threnax moved with the fluid grace of a predator that had never known defeat. His massive form closed the distance between himself and Dr. Sarah Chun in 3 enormous strides. His crystalline weapon trailing light through the air as he brought it down toward her unprotected head. Sarah dove to the side, her smaller size and lower center of gravity saving her from the strike that would have split her in half. The weapon crashed into the deck plating where she had been standing, leaving a crater in the reinforced metal. Doctor! Corvin's translated voice carried across the combat deck. His left shoulder favors that arm. The muscle development suggests an old injury. Sarah rolled away from Threnax's follow-up strike, her medical training letting her process Corvin's observation instantly. The Xanthari engineer's compound eyes could detect details human vision missed, and his technical background meant he understood structural weaknesses better than anyone. Threnax paused, his glowing eyes fixed on Corvin with something approaching surprise. Your clanmate sees clearly? My friend sees what I need him to see, Sarah replied, staying low and mobile as she studied the Korthic commander's movements. Just like I see what he needs me to see when his people are injured. Thylas, she called out, never taking her eyes off Threnax. Combat analysis. The Altarian's crystalline body flared with patterns of focused blue light. His stance prioritizes power over speed. Weight distribution suggests he expects to end fights quickly. Prolonged combat may not be his preference. Threnax's weapon swept through the air again, missing Sarah by inches as she used her agility to stay ahead of his devastating strikes. Each swing was perfectly executed, but she was beginning to see the patterns that Thylas had identified. The Korthic commander was used to opponents who tried to match his strength, who stood their ground and fought with honor until he cut them down. Doctor, Mix called out in their flowing, aquatic voice, his breathing rhythm. I can hear the harmonics. He's not used to extended pursuit. Sarah could hear it too now that Nyx had pointed it out. The slight change in Threnax's breathing as he continued trying to pin down an opponent who refused to engage directly. Her friends were giving her eyes and ears beyond human capacity, letting her analyze her opponent the way she would analyze a complex medical condition. You fight like prey? Threnax said, his voice carrying a note of confusion as he paused to reassess his approach. Where is your honor? Where is your courage? I'm fighting exactly like what I am, Sarah replied, keeping her distance as she circled around him. A doctor who saves lives instead of taking them. Then why are you here? Sarah gestured toward her 3 alien friends. Because they asked me to be here. Threnax followed her gesture, his ancient warrior mind struggling to process what he was seeing. They are not human. Why do they stand with you? Corvin, Sarah called out. Tell him. The Xanthari engineer stepped forward, his insectoid features clicking as he spoke. Dr. Chun saved my life when reactor radiation was dissolving my cellular structure from the inside. She worked for 16 hours straight, learning Xanthari physiology while she operated, refusing to give up even when her own medical staff told her it was hopeless. Threnax's glowing eyes shifted to Thylas. The Altarian's crystalline body pulsed with warm orange light as he spoke. She saved me when a terrorist attack left me with internal injuries that were severing my quantum neural pathways. She had never seen Altarian anatomy before, but she learned it while my life force was failing. She didn't just heal my body. She gave me back my future. Nyx flowed forward on their flexible limbs, their aquatic features rippling with emotion. She performed surgery on me when no one understood my species' physiology. A shipping accident had crushed my primary organ cluster, and every medical expert said I would die. She refused to accept that answer. She invented new surgical techniques in real time to save my life. Threnax lowered his weapon slightly, his massive head turning back to Sarah. You saved them all? I saved them because that's what doctors do, Sarah replied simply. We don't see species or politics or military alliances. We see people who are hurt, and we try to help them. And now they die with you? No, Corvin said, his mandibles clicking with fierce determination. Now we fight with her. Threnax's confusion deepened. You are not warriors. You have no weapons. We have something better, Thylas said, his crystalline structure flaring with protective golden light. We have purpose. Nyx's harmonics filled the air as they spoke. And we have debt. Dr. Chun gave us our lives back. How could we do any less for her people? Admiral Threnax stood motionless for a long moment, his ancient mind processing something he had never encountered in 3 centuries of combat. Around the edges of the combat deck, Sarah could see other members of his crew watching through the observation windows, their own expressions showing similar confusion. This is not how challenges work, Threnax said finally. Champions fight alone. They prove their worth through personal strength. Why? Sarah asked, and her simple question seemed to echo across the deck like a physical force. Double quotes, because ... Threnax began, then stopped, his glowing eyes narrowing as he struggled with the question. Because that is how it has always been done. But is that how it should be done? Sarah pressed, taking a step closer to the massive warrior. You fought 17 species, Admiral. How many of them sent champions who fought alone? All of them, and how many of them are still alive? Threnax was quiet for a long moment. None, Sarah gestured toward her friends again. These 3 represent species that were never strong enough to threaten your empire. The Zenthari are engineers and scientists. The Altarians are philosophers and artists. The Helios Confederation are traders and explorers. None of them could ever stand against the Korthic in direct combat. No, Threnax agreed. They could not. But they're standing here anyway, Sarah continued, ready to die for a human doctor they barely knew 5 years ago. Don't you find that strange? Admiral Threnax's weapon slowly lowered to his side as he studied the group before him. Sarah could see him processing what he was witnessing, trying to fit it into a worldview that had been shaped by countless victories over species that fought according to his own understanding of honor and strength. You are saying that humanity's weapon is not strength, he said slowly. Humanity's weapon is friendship, Sarah replied. We don't conquer people. We save them, we help them, we stand with them when they need us. And when we need them, they stand with us. Even when it means death? Sarah looked back at her 3 friends, seeing the absolute determination in their alien features. Especially when it means death. Threnax raised his weapon again, but his movement was slower, more thoughtful. This changes nothing. The combat must still be completed according to the ancient ways. Then let's complete it, Sarah said. Stepping forward with her empty hands raised, what happened next surprised everyone on the combat deck, including Sarah herself. As Threnax began his final attack, all 3 of her friends moved at once. Not to fight, but to place themselves between the Korthic warrior and their human friend. Corvin's insectoid form clicked with protective fury. Thylas's crystalline body blazed with defensive light. Nyx's aquatic features rippled with harmonics that spoke of absolute loyalty. Stand aside, Threnax commanded. The challenge is with the human. No, Corvin replied, his translated voice carrying absolute finality. The challenge is with our clan. And we protect our clan? Threnax stopped completely, his weapon frozen in mid-swing as he stared at the three aliens who were willing to die to protect a human who couldn't possibly defeat him. This is unprecedented, he said. And for the first time since the challenge began, his voice carried something other than certainty. This is humanity, Sarah said quietly. We make friends with people others consider enemies. We save lives others consider worthless. We stand together when others stand alone. Admiral Threnax lowered his weapon and stepped back, his glowing eyes moving from Sarah to each of her friends and back again. In 300 years of combat, I have never faced this weapon. What weapon? Sarah asked. Hope, Threnax replied. You give hope to others, and they give hope to you. It creates a strength that cannot be measured in physical power. The combat deck fell silent as the implications of his words settled over everyone present. Sarah could see understanding dawning in the ancient warrior's eyes, a recognition of something he had never encountered before. The ancient ways speak of honor in combat, Threnax said slowly. But they also speak of wisdom in leadership. A true warrior knows when they face a superior force. He raised his weapon high above his head, then drove it point first into the deck plating, where it stood vibrating like a metallic tree. I surrender this challenge to Dr. Sarah Chun and her clan. Sarah felt her legs go weak with relief, but she managed to stay standing as Threnax activated his communicator and spoke to his fleet in the Korthic language. She couldn't understand the words, but she could hear the tone of absolute command. The culling fleet is withdrawing, Threnax announced, turning back to Sarah and her friends. Humanity has proven itself worthy of continued existence. Just like that? Sarah asked, hardly daring to believe it was over. Threnax's mouth opened in what she had learned was Korthic laughter. Dr. Chun, in my long career,